Welcome back to Next Step U. It's been forever since we have dropped one of these podcasts, and it's probably because we have been traveling. It's an excuse, but it's been tough to try to figure out a time that works for all of us to meet up. And we've had Sam lined up as a guest for a while now, and now we're going to get to do this. He's a coach, a teacher, history advocate, and knows a lot about economics and just in general, an all-around great guy. Sam, if you want to take over and tell us anything we need to know more than that, I'm sure there's much to hear.
Well, I appreciate that. I think one of the first things I'd say is that nobody is defined by the job that they do. We can talk about the jobs that we do because they have influence on how we feel about things or how we might interpret the world. But ultimately, the job title I wouldn't say describes me perfectly, but it is also how I asked you to describe me in the intro.
Absolutely.
But I think the point of it is to say that I am a husband. I am a father of two girls. I'm a son of a family that we've had our own trials and tribulations and all those things. And everybody, I think, experiences those in different ways. So, I would say that if I'm to describe myself, it really would just be as a father and a husband and a son.
I'd say that's a great way to describe yourself and the wife.
I love that.
Yeah, she definitely likes that.
Yep.
But more specifically, first point of topic is education as a whole, correct? That's what we're liking to want to cover. And I guess we could go into college costs because that's the first point on my notes here. And we can talk more about you and what you do as a teacher. Obviously, we've got past the point that doesn't define you, but just your experiences there and then any insight you have on college costs.
Right. So, and part of why I defined that and I added that in there is because in the future, I'm going to hopefully send my girls to college for a purpose, right? And have it be, it really is a cost benefit. College ends up being a cost benefit. And I do teach freshmen at the moment. I used to teach freshmen through seniors at a smaller school. And so when I saw the college application process and the fact that it costs money to even apply to some schools and then you have so that limits people and how many places they can apply to.
Absolutely.
And then you talk about the price of college and, there's people that want to go to college to, like you did, to get into business, right? And for you, I think it was a benefit because it allowed you to sharpen the really strong ideas you already had, right?
I mean, we could go off that right there first. I don't know. I have a different opinion on education as a whole when it comes to stuff like that. It definitely helped me, and it was a great experience, and I got to meet really good people that already have put me farther in the world than I would be without them. Yvonne is one person. She runs the CIE at Mankato. Great person, and experiences like that.
You were a leader of that group, right?
I was president of the entrepreneurship club for a semester or two and vice president for a semester or two as well. But things like that, I think college is great for, and I would advocate for. But I do wish that somebody would have told me to go for something that I don't already know a little bit about or I'm already interested in, because I think that's something that, like, business interests me in all aspects. Doesn't matter, operations, marketing, peer-to-peer sales, anything. So it's not so hard for me to learn about that stuff because I will take the time to go to YouTube, take the time to go to LinkedIn Learning, take the time to talk to people out in the community to further, my knowledge in the business aspect of the world. Something I am realizing now is that I wish I would have went for something that would be a little more challenging to me that might help me in business, such as like IT. Honestly, I really, really wish I would have went for that. So I understood that aspect, because blockchain is an interesting technology that's going to change our world, I think. And I would like to be on the forefront of that. And I think there's money to be made in businesses to help us as a whole, as a society, that I just can't. I can have an idea, but I can't make it happen because it's just so far over my head. Like, it would take me years of studying that. But then again, I went to school for business, so I made some connections there, and I already know some people that can do that. But if I were to go back, my advice would be to go for something, if it's business wise, like, I don't know, that's an interesting degree. Like, there's some degrees obviously you need to go for, like teaching would be one of them,
Well, actually, if I can stop you right there,
Absolutely.
I don't mean to be, no, because you're making a great point. And the reason why is because college has turned into a licensure program. And when you're getting a situation like business, right, when you're talking about a business degree, I think what you say is great because you want to challenge and diversify your knowledge and your abilities. And you're going to have those general ed business classes that give you a wide spectrum to have some of those connecting and networking courses, right? And I think the reason why I say I thought it was good that, like, for you, I thought college was good in business. Not everybody does it make sense to go to business college.
Yep.
But for you, I think it made sense because it got to sharpen the knife. It got to allow you to network with people so that now you can take that 5 years while you build your brand and then own the IT. But the IT point is actually one of the things I'd like to touch on because I think nobody saw COVID coming when you entered college.
Absolutely.
Right? And if we had, we would have pushed everybody to IT because
Yep.
that's really where the business is right now. And that's where small businesses outside of restaurants and bars, but the small businesses that are suffering outside of food industry in Minnesota anyway, or in other places where those have been limited in what they can do, to put it politically correct. But the thing that they've suffered with the most is they don't have an online platform.
Yep.
You know, so and not having a platform is where somebody like a you in the future could be on a chamber of commerce and have that IT background and be able to help small businesses in local areas. But then also bringing that brand wider, you know, if it's working in a random town in Nebraska, it's going to work somewhere else as well, as long as the marketing plan itself fits with what's able to be done by IT. Right. And I think that's where you would have loved if you would have challenged yourself there, because then now those, you know, but that's a little bit retroactive. So when we're looking futuristic, when we're looking at what kids now in high school can do, and looking at degrees, I think they really should learn from the COVID world, because a lot of the things that we see in the COVID world, I believe are going to stick.
Absolutely.
I think they should stick. There's no reason for us all to travel 30 minutes into an office space if we can get the stuff done at home.
I agree with that 100%. I think people are just so resistant to change. That's where you see all the complaining about it, but it was bound to happen eventually. And I think that's something like she's definitely big on, is like mindset. And I know I am too. And it's like, you can only complain so much about stuff changing. Like, it's going to change. That's just the way the world is. And that's the way it's been since the start of time. And something like this, like, looking at it negatively, it's really bad, but you got to take some positive out of it, and it's pushing the world forward, and it's going to need to go forward if we're going to continue to be a civilization that's successful.
Right. And I think it goes back to cost benefit analysis, right? The very basic, like the first week of economics that we teach in high school, right? We're talking about choices and how your choices have consequences. And really, economics isn't about money. It's about the choices we make as individuals. It's the study of the choices we make as individuals and why we choose this over this. And if we can understand the behavior relationship there, then we can start to understand how you make that money as an individual business person, or even as a government, how that money should be distributed, or if that money should be distributed at all, based on your political philosophy behind all of the stuff that goes into that, right? Not to give myself away too much, but I do believe that it's important that we take care of those that don't have, so that we provide opportunities for them, because that will actually, in my opinion, and from what I've seen with groups that do this correctly, is that benefits the company as a whole. You know, one of those groups that I would say would actually be professional sports. And this is one that nobody will talk about, but the fact that their unions have gotten stronger has built their brand. Now, I'm not saying unions work for every business, but in some cases, if the business at the top is taking care of its employees, then you're gonna find that benefit. And how that relates to colleges have to benefit their students. And so part of why prices have gone up is because there's a lot more student activity and a lot more things that they bring to students, but all of that comes with a price. Now, does that price have to astronomically increase since 2000 even? It shouldn't, because those are things that colleges should have been doing in the first place. We're no longer, we're in like what, the fourth industrial revolution? Is that what they say now? Or are we on the fifth now with 5G? Does that make the fifth?
Who knows?
But we're I should probably actually have that. I think it's the fourth, but with 5G, I'd say we're probably crossing into the fifth. But I think it's important that we realize that with that technology, with that increase, with all that stuff, it should cut costs. It should not increase costs, and it does cut. It is not cutting costs, and part of that is because of federal loans that allow for people to go for cheaper prices.
Yeah.
Part of that also, Summer, that dog is beautiful.
Just climbed on my chair.
He's mad he's not getting attention right now.
Yes.
That's all right. He can be in the picture. I think.
Sorry for the distraction.
But then the other side of it really is, and I don't want to just talk to talk, but the biggest thing is the cost benefit piece. So as long as kids are informed, totally informed, and Logan, you mentioned that you didn't feel like you were informed about what would be the best route for you right away, and part of that is a failure of teachers to inform you on that, but also, and I'm one of them, so I can say that, but it's also a part of the colleges to actually sell their product honestly.
I think there's just massive issues with just like being informed, especially on this decision. It's just set up to put you into it with having no clue what's going on, like realistically. And I know you teach a class that does help with that somewhat, but besides the point of this topic, I don't think that it also comes down to parenting too. And nothing bad to say about my parents by any means. Like, they pushed me to go to college and wanted me to go to school and get educated, but nobody asks like the hard questions. Nobody asks, okay, the easy way out is to go for business because that's what you feel you're good at. That's what you like to do. But it's different for some degrees. And like, that's what I was trying to get at. Like, if you're going to be a dentist, like, you got to go to be a dentist. I get that. But for some of the different more relaxed and open degrees, such as like business or marketing or communications or anything like that, that's more broad and more open, instead of me taking the easy way out and saying, okay, I think I'll be able to get through school easiest in business and make my family happy and graduate, maybe I should try to push myself and do something. I think that just speaks to our society as a whole. And especially because I feel like I'm probably at least top 50th percentile with wanting to push myself and wanting to do things like that. And if even I'm not thinking that way,
you're too low on that bar for yourself. You're too low.
I didn't want to be, I didn't want to be like that, but if I'm not thinking like that, not very many people are. And that's where it's just an interesting thing to me that we don't go over more of it in school. And I know like it's a lot of the kids' fault. They don't want to listen. But if I was more informed on how much it was going to cost me to go and
like informed on other opportunities, like other options other than college, like even the different trades, like being informed on the money that can be made and the life that you can make for yourself, doing other things other than college.
And then
100%. That's actually a huge point. Like Abbott has actually changed their
explain
Elio, explain what that is.
Yeah, so Abbott is a career and college readiness program now. It used to be a college readiness program, and now they've defined that as career and college readiness based on helping kids get through high school and develop the tools they need to be successful in the real world based on what they want to do. And so some of the information does get skewed towards a kid's interest as a junior and senior, and that interest might change. And so sometimes kids will feel, there has been times when kids have felt like they weren't prepared, but that's because their interest changed. And we had prepared them for the interest that they had at that time, and that's also where I would say a tracking program in high school is not something that's efficient, because kids in ninth grade don't know, like they might want to be a veterinarian in ninth grade, and they get to senior year and they're like, I don't want to cut open a dog. Change, but they just spent their whole high school career preparing for that one interest. And so giving kids those early opportunities. And one thing that we've done at our school now is we've created and this is more specific to my career, but we've created a teacher candidate program starting at sophomore year of high school, where kids can get into it and kind of get an idea of what that career holds. But again, teachers, the licensure system in Minnesota has changed, but that also affects the ability to self-advocate in some ways. The union's starting to switch on that, where all of them are starting to jump in based on like school district by school district, because some have the limitation. You know, you got to be a licensed teacher versus tier 1 license versus tier 2 license, just to make the degree mean something, is really all it really is. But I think that's, and we're kind of bouncing off here and bouncing around, and I feel a little bit like Gary. I know you like Gary, Logan.
Yeah, Gary V.
Yeah,
Talking Gary V.
I'm a little bit like Gary right now. I'm just jumping all over the place.
It happens though. It happens.
But the big thing with specifically with teaching is that you need that licensure to give yourself a chance to be one of the ones that gets the job. But in Minnesota, we have a surplus of teachers and a shortage of jobs being filled. We actually have enough licensed teachers to teach our positions.
So what's going on?
Many of them actually move into insurance selling. Many turn into business because teachers typically tend to be outgoing, tend to be knowledgeable, and tend to be people, and that allows them. And this is a generalization. So if anybody has like facts behind this that tell me I'm wrong, I will accept them. I'm generalizing based on my experience and what I've seen, right? And many of them do leave teaching for business or leave teaching for insurance sales, which is business, but a different type of business than what we're probably assuming when we talk about it. So the one thing that I just had to keep going back to is it's all about cost benefit. So for me, getting into teaching was one of those things of I would have job security. With a license, I would have job security because there's always going to be a teaching opening. Assuming that I trust myself enough to be able to win the job, right?
Absolutely.
And so like if I'm not good and I didn't do my job in college, I'm not going to get that job anyway. You know, if I didn't get the right network, I have to still work for that part of it. I can't just get the license and expect a job. And I think that actually is a key to this all, is you can't just get a degree and expect you're going to get a job in that degree. And
well, a part of that too, I feel like, is society portrays a college degree as a golden ticket. Like if you get a college degree, you're guaranteed a job at the end of it, which in reality, it's not true. So you have an abundance of college kids graduating and expecting jobs, but there isn't enough of them out there, or at least up to their standards.
You said golden ticket, and that's in this article. Actually, I'd like to share the article if I could. I think I requested to share. I don't know if I'm not allowed to.
Oh, can you?
It says it's disabled. Can I read from it? Would people?
Yeah, absolutely. You can read from it.
Not everybody's a verbal learner, but I will do my best here with trying to display it. I got to get back to where it said golden ticket because I scrolled down a little bit from that. Let's see here.
Next time I'll have to make my other people share.
So I actually scrolled up from it. So it says many students treat a college. This is a Forbes article from, the guy's name is Preston Cooper. It was written in August 31st, 2020. And it's about a new study investigates why college tuition is so expensive. So it says here, many students treat a college degree as a golden ticket to the middle class. Akers argues, this is Akers. I'm sorry, I'm too lazy to scroll up and find his first name, but I gave you the article so you guys can find it.
You're good. That's enough.
The decision to go to college is fundamentally a cost benefit calculation, which is what I've been talking about. If the financial return to college is high enough, then students should theoretically be willing to pay high amounts because they still come out ahead in the long run. But few students are sitting down with Excel spreadsheets to calculate the return to college. Instead, they rely on impressions of how much a college degree will earn them in the long run, yet only some degrees are worth paying top dollar. And the general impression that every degree is valuable, a golden ticket, or so to speak, pushes up students' willingness to pay for college and consequently inflates college tuition. So this is really, I think, what it's saying there is exactly what Summer was saying, but to take it a little bit different route would be who's responsible for the prices of college. The who's responsible for those prices. Is that the colleges themselves? One of the other things I mentioned in the article is about how there's not enough colleges in the regions to have the same competition as like laptops did. Like laptops at the outset would cost $5,000 right now, according to the article. and now they cost $200.
Yep.
With better. So that's a situation where capitalism is pushing us forward. But do the workers own the means of production? And in a college setting, who owns the means of production? The professors decide everything, and we can't pay professors enough to stay at a college, which drives the cost up as well. So just there's a lot of different layers to it that I think any political philosophy that's just in one set mindset is going to fail it. You're going to fail that system.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Why did you choose to teach high schoolers?
This is funny. So I don't know if this is going to sound good or not, so I'm just being honest. Logan knows I will be brutally honest about anything.
Yeah, if it doesn't sound good, I mean, we'll tell you or we'll cut it. It's all right.
No, if it doesn't sound good, then tell me, and then we'll have a debate about it.
Okay.
No, so actually my grandma, she asked me right away. She said, "Why aren't you doing elementary? Because as a male, you would have a better chance of getting a job in elementary because there's so many female teachers in elementary, and they want more male role models in elementary, and there's so many male teachers at the secondary level, and they want more female role models at the secondary level, and that includes people of all minority groups. They want more of those at the secondary level because we have a lot of white males teaching at the secondary level." And my simple answer was, because when I have kids, and I have a 7-year-old at home that needs me, and I just dealt with 7-year-olds all day, I'm not sure how I'm going to handle that. But if I have a 16-year-old at home and I've been dealing with 16-year-olds all day, I can walk away and know that they're going to be fine. So that's really the only answer I have to that. I actually love working with kids of all age groups, but I also enjoy the push of I think at the high school level too. There's an idea that you're developing somebody from adolescence, helping develop somebody from adolescence. It's not just the teacher, but helping develop them from adolescence to adulthood in some ways. And I think Logan's known, not necessarily in a personal experience, but with people that he's friends with, that I didn't stop teaching after high school. I still have been involved and tried to help out with these people and help find them jobs. I've used the resources I have to try and put them in positions, and when they make mistakes, I let them make them because they're adults at that point, right?
Absolutely. So it was like, it's like being part of their transition to something bigger. It's a big stage in their lifetime to take the next step to go to school or get a job, or massive transition. And I have a question actually off of that as well, talking about your first point of the cost benefit of school. What made you decide to teach, and how much roughly did you pay for your degree? Yeah. Were you happy with that decision? Are you not happy with that decision? And was it because you were uninformed, or because you did it out of love and you really wanted to teach? Because me as well, like, this is why I started the podcast, is I'm a lot like you. I think I like to help people, and I want to do whatever the heck I can to help people. And I like talking, and I like anybody. I can deal with anybody. I don't have a problem with anybody, and I can just keep going all day. But I could teach 100%. I think I would like it, but my preference, I don't know if it would bring me the money that I would want it to. And then 2, there's other options to get to that means, which is why I started this, honestly, because I was worrying too much about short-term money and not about what I love to do. And I think that's a whole nother topic. There's so many topics here, but I wanted to just start talking. And I don't care if 2 people listen to this or 1,000 people listen to this. I just wanted to talk to people and have it recorded somewhere. So if it helps one kid, it helps one kid.
And that's what I'm jealous of, is that I've actually wanted to do a podcast, but I could never pick like a topic. And I felt like I would get too far off on tangent.
It happens to me sometimes too.
But I'm jealous of you in the fact that you did it. You just went and did it. And I think that's the key to it, is just going and doing it. So to answer your first question about the cost benefit with teacher in college, I didn't go to college to be a teacher. I actually went to college to be a physical therapist. The college I went to didn't have physical therapy, but they had baseball, and I played baseball in college. And so they had exercise science. And when I finished my first semester of classes, and I had the core classes for the exercise science program, I felt okay, but not 100% confident yet that I made the right choice. And then I also my second semester did the same thing. And after I was done, I was like, I need to really expand my horizons and see what else is out there. Now, when it comes to cost, I saved. I'm going to bounce back and forth here a little bit, but I saved cost by having really good grades in high school, by getting scholarships, and from some Fed loan help. I was able to save costs in those realms, and those realms are specific to not only the school, but also your ability to write. I think writing is a really important tool that a lot of high school kids don't understand when it comes to college scholarships, is being able to write and express yourself and be honest and open. And that's not really being helped by COVID, because we don't get to have the face-to-face interactions to have those experiences right now as often as we'd like. We still can in some ways. But the going back to the cost part of it is I was able to save money because of my ability to do well in school, in high school. And the only thing I did in high school is whatever the teachers told me to do. I just did the work. I mean, I'm not going to say I was like I don't feel like I was a 4.0 student, but I did everything they asked me to do. And I showed that I understood what they were talking about. And that was it. That was all I really focused on. Now, I took classes like pre-calc and statistics and I took in math, and I don't like math, but I took those classes anyway, because those were the hardest level classes that were available to me. And so getting good grades in those classes also helped with my scholarship money, also helped with what I could get. So I actually started at the college I went to with a really good scholarship that made it cheaper for me to go there than a public school. And I went to a private institution, and it was cheaper for me to go there than to a public school because of the scholarship money I got. Now, after one semester, I lost some of that because I was taking classes that I didn't fit in, and I didn't understand, and I didn't know what I was doing. And then to bounce back to high school again, my freshman year of high school, I wanted to be, I was determined that I was just going to try and make it to the minors in baseball. And I was nowhere near good enough, but I was just determined. That was my goal, right? That was what I wanted to do. So I'm going to get the grades I need to do. I'm going to put the work in. I'm going to hit in cages all the time. I'm going to ignore girls. And then sophomore year, I was like, I'm not that good. I'm good, but I'm also at a level that is different than that level.
Yeah.
Right. And so I realized really early in high school that wasn't maybe the right space for me. And so I was also confirmed that year in the Catholic faith. Now, here's where I'm like, this is where it gets, we can go off on a tangent about this if you really want to, because I actually lean, I didn't always, I used to lean to the right in libertarian, and now I lean to the left, but still libertarian. And those are two very different things. And it's amazing how libertarians argue with each other, because it's always about no government, but it's not just, that's not the point, is no government. The point is a stable government, right? So, and there's always balance, there's always middle, and the fact that people are all different is what brings us to the middle, and that's what the goal is with our Constitution anyway, right? So that's a whole different topic. Sorry.
We can circle back to that.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so having that, like the in my Catholic confirmation, I chose Ignatius de Loyola as my patron saint, and he actually is the patron saint of teachers. And I chose him because of that, because I saw myself as a teacher, but I didn't see myself in that profession yet. And so junior year, I started going like, maybe I want to be a teacher. Maybe that'd be fun. Like I like school. You know, at this point now, I've been in school for 27 years.
Yeah.
So, you know, but yeah, moving that on to like my senior year, I was like, no, I want to be out of the education system, and I want to just experience the world without education, right? Well, with education, but without the system.
The formal system education.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. So I got to college, and I had that first year where I was like, I really don't know what I like. Took an education class, one of the entry level ones, my sophomore year, first semester. Got to tutor in a school, and um, loved it. And so I fell in love with the work first, and then I had to look at, is this going to financially be beneficial? So background of my family is, we actually are, on my mom's side, we are a business family in Mankato. There's actually multiple restaurants in Mankato that my family owns, operates, or manages. I have, so it's a lot of the food business. I also have, um, I'm trying to get, I don't want to give my family away in case I want to sell me right now, but the, they're, if we look at, they won't want to disown me. They, basically the Happy Chef chain and the Super 8 chain, when those started merging together, that was due to my great uncle. My grandpa ended up taking over that business, and I was due to my great uncle, who ended up serving in the state Congress for Minnesota. He's got a book about it. It's not a very popular book, but all of the family has it. And then my uncle actually is a part of downtown business in Mankato that has done well, but COVID has given them some troubles, right? So I see things from a lot of different perspectives. And I think that's one of the things that has benefited me and has really made me love teaching. I also had friends in high school that got caught doing things they shouldn't have been doing. I won't get specific on that because it might be too specific. But they were doing things they shouldn't have been doing. They were my best friends. And so I wanted to find a way to be able to help people in a way that would allow them to find the opportunities that are out there without turning to those things.
Yep.
But that's also, now as a father and as a son and as a husband, those decisions also now cause me to feel in a position where we got to fight to defend the integrity of our job and treat it like a profession. And I don't think there's any job that should be called a profession. Well, let me say, I said that wrong. I don't think there's any profession that should deserve that name without having standards and accountability to it. And that's where the argument can start.
We
right?
could go all the way up to the top though.
But I would say without a license on that, like, and I'm not saying that everybody should have to go to college to get a license,
Yeah.
right? Like, if businesses are able to provide a license through how they train people, and then you can call it a profession. You can call it, and professions are different than careers. There's a, to me, there's a clear cut on that. A profession is not a career. A career is what you choose to do.
Okay.
A career is what you choose to do.
Okay.
A profession is something that you had to go through all the hoops for. And now you have to be accountable to all those hoops. So like a police officer, that's a profession, right? So you have to earn that career. You have to earn your way in there. You have to get all the training for it. And if you make a mistake, you're held accountable for it. Same with a teacher. It should be the same for a teacher. And I'm speaking, I made mistakes too, but
Absolutely.
That's,
So I mean, that's a massively interesting conversation because I'm definitely middle to talking about that. I'm very, very independent. I voted independent as well because I don't believe in the two-party system, but that's a different topic as well. But circling that all around to being held accountable,
Right.
I would say the people that are complaining about our generation and just the way our world is going and not being held accountable and people not wanting to have jobs, not wanting to have careers, not wanting to do anything, and being held accountable for your actions, no matter if it is in the professional world or your personal world, comes all the way back to the way a lot of us were raised. And those are the people that are complaining about the actions of our society and the way it is going. And then for me, a big thing that a massive thing that comes up is who we look up to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And who's in positions of authority and the way they're held accountable. so that gets a little bit too political almost for me to continue talking about it. But
Based on recent events. I'll let you take that where
yeah,
you want to take it.
so I could say both ways because I feel like it happens both sides of the ball. But
Yeah.
yes, if we're going to continue to push that type of leadership and that type of society and that type of structure on kids, you can't blame the 7-year-old that's at home, whether it's a far right family or a far left family. You almost can't blame them for the way that they grow up because that's all that they know. But then there is the aspect of maybe you should try to go out in the world and learn a little bit more, because I feel like, honestly, a lot of the people that are good people are middle people because they know enough to be logical and to take both sides into account, and they don't just hold one belief and they just turn their head to the other one. They know enough and are patient enough to at least have a conversation. And I don't have problems with the right or the left if they will have a conversation, but the people that push false narratives and then just point fingers, we're going to continue on a path of not good things happening in our society if that's how we portray actions that people make. Then kids think they're okay to do that, right? I don't know. It's such a complex topic, and it's hard for me to structure my thoughts politically correct and without offending too many people. But I'm pretty middle on everything, and I just think that we need to wake up as a society as a whole and realize what's going on both sides of the ball and stop pointing fingers.
The reason that you don't want to speak with brutal honesty, you're speaking in honesty, but the reason you don't want to speak in that brutal honesty is because we're worried about what the left or right will say, in the sense that we're in the middle. Because I'm in the middle with you. I'm actually in the middle. I mentioned before that when I took the political spectrum quiz, it put me on the left side all of a sudden. A month ago, I was on the right side.
Yep, that's exactly. I took 3 different ones. They put me dead in the middle.
Yeah, I keep moving back and forth. It's ridiculous. So the one I took last night called me Gandhi, which was like, I have no idea how I'm Gandhi. But the one I took a month ago put me like the lower right block. And then the one I took yesterday put me like the lower second block. And I don't know if that was due to recent political things, because I've called that out and I've said that that's going to happen if we continue down this path of letting people just say whatever they want to say. But it's due to both sides. Both sides do that. And I'm fair with that. I will say there's a difference between the summer and what happened 2 weeks ago. There's a big difference. You know, one is a riot based on a person not being held accountable for their job, and they were allowed to do it with 3 other people standing around them. The other one is a person that is, he might not even know he's doing it.
That's the thing. And that's
so interesting.
That's the thing I think is,
know he's doing it. He might be so narcissistic he doesn't even realize what he's doing.
And I also agree, and that's why I don't think that you can. It's so interesting to me because
you have to hold him accountable, but you
have to hold him accountable. I agree with that, but
he did, yeah.
What I was going there is that's why I don't like people pushing. So like we can get into, I guess, voter fraud a little bit. This video is probably going to get flagged.
Flagged as.
Oh, God. So
Hillary told me there's certain things I can't say.
It's all being said.
It is all being said. It's okay. It's better this way. It's too gone. But like when we get into the voter fraud thing, that's where I get to, if it happened, ring them up in the courts, right? If you truly are patriotic and you believe in our system and you believe that we work as a nation and we are great, then our courts should be good enough to catch that. My issue with what he did and what that side was pushing is people are uneducated in the United States, both sides on the far, because I don't want to get one-sided, but they will listen to what a person in a leadership role is saying. And you can create any narrative you want to create if you continue to push it. Like that's scientifically factual. And that's why placebo works, because you really do have the power to create that narrative, and people will be brainwashed and believe that. So that's where I had the problem with, let's just continue to push that narrative for a month straight and offer $1 million rewards for anybody that can come forward. Every single person that hasn't seen $20 in the last month is going to come up with some story that they saw voter fraud. Two, you can come out or issue a statement saying that you don't believe our election went well, but then it's back to leading our country. And if you have evidence of that, it will be found in court, it will be prosecuted, and everything will be reversed. But
there's a court process. There is a process to follow. The process was being followed with a backwind behind it on Twitter and in social spheres and in I didn't even know what Parler was yet, but I found out a lot about Parler in the last 2 months. And I really think that a lot of, like when we talk about and this is where I say there's a false equivalency when people make the argument from the summer to now, is what we were shown on TV was the violence, because that is the news.
Yep. That's what they're paid to do, and that's what they make money doing.
Exactly. And that's the same thing they did. Well, with the riots, they just showed it live. It was a live thing. It happened while they were meeting in the House.
Yeah.
And in Congress. They were meeting at the the U.S. Capitol, So I was watching it live when it happened. I actually got up and had to leave my house and just listen to it on the radio, because I was like, I can't watch this anymore. This is, I was watching it live. It happened live. It wasn't like it just was what the media was showing us. It was happening live.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is the media going to point their fingers at the people that were outside and not participating? No, they're not. They're going to follow where the action is, and the action was at the Capitol steps.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what happened, I remember watching Unicorn Riot, and now, granted,
I watch the same things.
Yeah, Unicorn Riot they were interviewing everybody they wanted to interview, and every single person in part of the violent areas of the Minneapolis stuff, right? And again, I've already regarded to the fact that I feel like they're two totally different things.
I agree too.
In the front place, but when we look at who people were saying they were, it was, I don't have their names right now. I can't remember their names from that long ago, but it was like Rob from Louisville.
Yep.
They were, none of them were from Minneapolis. They didn't interview one person from Minneapolis in Unicorn Riot, because they couldn't find any.
Mm-hmm.
And, so that's where I look at it. I'm like, this isn't the people of that area. And now, have you seen what's happened with businesses in that area? So I'll let you, if you have an understanding of it, I'll let you explain a little bit more.
Otherwise, not fully. You go into it first, and I can add where I can add.
Well, basically, it was an area that they were trying to. It was being de-gentrified, and now it's being gentrified.
Explain that, because I guarantee you 80% of people watching won't understand that.
So they were starting to work their way out of having corporate control over their local neighborhood.
Yep.
And now corporate buildings are buying up those areas and rebuilding. So is that the same understanding you have of what you've heard?
Yeah. Yep. Basically.
So I think that's a whole, like, going back to what you were talking about before. We're talking about two political parties, and I will say I disagree. I think we need to have only two. We can't have 3 or 4, because we'll never get a majority, and then we'll always be that's just my opinion. That's not necessarily a fact. And you can use your opinion to tell me I'm wrong on that, and I'll respect it and hear it. But I think the two-party system needs to be changed from within, because right now it's controlled by corporations.
Mm-hmm.
Right now it's controlled by corporations and lobbyists. And
yep.
And that's not, I don't really think that's conspiracy. I think that's when you go to the state capitol or the U.S. Capitol, either one, and you go for a lobby of any corporate idea, it's somebody standing in front of you that gets paid more than you telling you what you're supposed to tell politicians. And I'm going to tell them what my experience is. That's it. Like that's what you should be doing, right? When you go to talk to a politician, just tell them your experience and working through that. And that's where the divide really comes in, is where the money is and what can make those businesses money. And right now, what makes businesses money is being, all of a sudden, the last 2 weeks has been to be anti-Trump, which is why we see a lot of the media censorship and a lot of that stuff happening. But that's also capitalism. And that's what people need to realize on the
People,
far right.
yeah, people argue,
Yeah.
people contradict themselves because they don't understand what truly is that.
Yeah. If you're going to use a law to say that I can't sell or that I have the right to refuse making a cake for somebody in Colorado that that's a gay couple that wants a wedding cake, and I can refuse service for that, then as a Twitter media company, can I not refuse service to somebody who's who's appearing as, I can't say indefinitely because we have to see the process play out, right?
Yep. See what happens. Yep.
But at this point, they're worried about him inciting violence, and so they'll block anybody that they worry is inciting violence. If I get on it right now and say something that does not fit their codes, they're going to block me. They have the right to do that.
That it's so funny that you say that and you bring that up, because that's the thing. A lot of people that argue that point, and I'm not saying I'm for it or against it, but a lot of people that argue that point don't even understand the whole aspect of the question and how far it really roots into America and all the way from the start. You can't just pick and choose where you want to agree with the law and where you don't want to agree with the law. Like, oh God, this is so bad, but we're getting deep into that. But like, the guy we're talking about tweeted during the Black Lives Matter riots that anybody that touches state or federal property should be in jail for at least 10 years. But then you ask your group of people to come to state and federal property to protest, which should be a right, and I agree, should be a right. You can protest, you shouldn't destroy property, but you can protest legally. But you ask them to come to state and federal property. So where is that in, you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of, you can't just pick and choose when you want to agree with the law and when you don't want to agree with the law. If the law of the land is the law of the land, it is what it is.
And this may be
every situation. Right.
And this may be a shallow, I might say something here that's a shallow way of putting it. But when we talk about the 1960s and the civil rights movement, and we had the walk from Birmingham to Montgomery, right? We had or from Selma, and they walked on the highway through rural country in the South during a time where segregation was beginning to be outlawed, right? When they can do that and they're protected by state and federal officials, which they should have been because of the danger that they were putting themselves in, but that was a public road. So it all comes down to defining terms and defining what is a public structure. And so I'm saying that only to say, look what happened in Minneapolis over the last summer. They had a protest on a bridge, which I'm pretty sure the purpose was to say, this is the same stuff we've been dealing with for the last 60 years. This is Selma all over again. I'm pretty sure that was the purpose. I didn't see anybody on that bridge throwing Molotov cocktails. I didn't see anybody planting bombs outside the U.S. Capitol building. Okay, they were walking on a bridge. And the truck driver, I do think that the exit was closed down late and all of a sudden he had to brake fast, and thankfully he didn't hit anybody. But I don't blame people for interpreting his actions in a different way.
Yep.
So it's so everything has layers. I think that's the thing. Everything has layers.
Yep.
And we started this conversation talking about cost benefit analysis of college.
Yeah.
I think that shows how everything is interconnected, though.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And really, the biggest issue is inequity. And so when we talk about inequity,
let's talk about that as a whole, because I want you to define that more so I understand it as well as other people.
So inequality would be that we don't have the same things.
Okay.
Inequity would be that we don't have the same opportunities.
Okay.
I think I've seen pictures that explain that too.
I have too.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Well, and justice is the far right part of it, right? Well, not far right politically, just there. It starts on the left side. Can you see, is this the left side or the right side?
Right.
That's the right side.
Okay, so I'm going to go backwards here. As a teacher, I have to make sure that I'm doing this right. So in the picture on the far left side, it shows inequality. And then it shows equality. And then it shows inequity. And then it shows equity. And then it shows justice. And justice is a whole nother level. And I think the idea of, and I say I think only, this is what I believe, but I say I think only because I haven't been shown something that tells me that I'm wrong on this belief. So I'm willing to be open to hearing things. I'm always, you know, that with the voicing your opinion projects that we had you guys do as sophomores, right? I'll listen to anybody and I'll always disagree with you just to make sure that you understand what you feel, right?
Absolutely.
I'll let you describe how those projects went down the road here. But when it comes to justice, my belief at this moment is that if we're not working for equality in the sense of opportunity, which is what I define equity as, right? So if we're not looking for equity, we're not getting to justice. We'll never get to justice. If we're just looking to be equal, then we're not.
I almost want to find that picture. Like, Logan, can you find it on Google and like share your screen? Like, look up
under equality versus equity versus justice. If you do that, you should be
it's a picture of like a shorter person and a taller person, like looking over a fence. Oh, and then like if you're talking
Can you
about
see my screen?
Yeah. Like if you're talking about,
what am I typing?
I would say equality versus equity versus justice. It's an apple tree picture, right, Summer? Or is it like an orange tree? Peach tree?
I don't know. I think yeah. I know what you're talking about.
I have these on my phone. It's funny that you say that. I was trying to find them and I got this exact same thing. We're talking here, right? Correct?
Yeah. So
we're talking here.
That one, is it the one on the right there?
Are we talking this right here? Yeah, on the right.
I think the one that's big right above it, right there.
This one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about.
Bigger.
Yeah.
Zoom in. Can you see it or no?
Click on it so it makes it bigger.
Then it takes me to the site.
So you notice, well, you can stay there because you notice the fence, right? Inequality and in equity, we're still always looking at how do we get people to get over the fence, to be able to see over the fence. In justice, you're looking at changing the system so that you don't have to do the rest of it. But if you're not working for equity, you'll never find the ability to find justice, right? Because it costs you more money to have a wooden fence and to buy those two boxes on the middle and the right in equity. It costs you a lot less money to put a chain link fence in where everybody can see the game.
So how do we apply that to our society?
Well, we have to first off have people believe that justice is a thing that needs to be happening. So, now for me, there's going to be things where that takes some of the privilege that I've had away, right? And if you want to talk about privilege, we can go there. For me, it's simply being born how I look on the screen right now, and I know people would disagree with that, but I also know that I was born in a family where I have a lot of different perspectives, and I really don't want to get into the personal stuff of that. But if people want to, they can reach out to me, and I can tell them some of those personal stories. But I can also say being white in America is a huge benefit. It really is, especially as a male.
Which is sad that we're saying that now after so many years of people trying to make changes, and we're still saying that.
I think you're ignorant if you don't believe that's a true statement, honestly.
Right, but I'm not going to disagree with that, but I don't want those that we might label that way to not be willing to come to the table, because we need everybody to come to the table still so that we can teach that information, have it be understood in a way that is brought into context, and that's something that I feel I'm able to do sometimes, not able to do other times. And I agree with Summer. It is sad. It is sad, but at the same time, we're not that far gone from imperialism throughout the world, and we're not that far gone from being a British colony that was practicing this. We're not that far gone from the Berlin Conference in the 1800s that split up Africa the way they wanted to have it be split up. We're not that far gone from slavery. We're not that far gone from Jim Crow. We feel like we are. We feel like it's not our fault because we didn't do it ourselves. But there still needs to be some sort of, I think the wrong word to say would be retribution. I think the right word to say would be there needs to be some sort of, I had this word earlier. I was ready to use this word earlier. It's another R word. But no, it's basically just a reckoning, understanding that there is an inherent systemic issue. And that's not just social justice. That's not just in politics. That's not just in redlining, although redlining would then fit with social justice in politics. And it's also in education. There's things that we need to change. And one of the things that I am on the equity team in my school. And the thing I get most frustrated with at times is we talk a lot. We talk a lot about, and we have to have these conversations. But I think we talk a lot and we forget at times that there's people that have been doing this since the 1950s, 1960s when working towards these issues. There's people that have been doing it, and we should be standing on their shoulders, not trying to find a new path. They have paved the path. It is there. And if we don't keep following it, it's going to get grown over by grass and it's going to be disappearing from us. We have to go on the path that they've taken us on. We have to listen to the people that have been there and done that and seen it. And we also have to find a path forward that, not to use a medieval European tale, but King Arthur's round table. We need to get everybody at that round table. And the way to do that is not through, it needs to be through politics, but it's not through politics right now.
Jeez. Okay. I mean, that's crazy interesting and a whole topic, definitely. We can talk a little bit more about COVID, I guess, to move on a little bit.
There it is. Really pulling it all out.
We're getting flagged either way.
Yeah, that's a red word.
Yeah. We can talk about it, and we can talk about the different ways that's kind of playing into what we just got done talking about, because I know that was a topic we want to talk about, and we can definitely tie that into
two words. It's 2 words. It's a 2-word answer. Mental health.
Okay. All right. She would love to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let I'm listening. I'll hear.
No, you got to start it out, and I'll add in. We know
really,
that I can't
really
talk. Can't put me on a spot like that, Sam.
Okay, I mean, I can start it out from what my perspective is on it. For me, mental health is something I never even thought about previous to meeting her, honestly. Not even once did it cross my mind, because I'm such a happy individual and I'm very lucky to be that. It never once even crossed my mind that we should be talking about it. We should be open about it. We should be more informed about it. We should be more open to asking others how they're doing, and, how could we help, or how could we understand the situation more. When I met her, I realized that not everybody is exactly how they seem on the outside. And that's not a bad thing by any means, and definitely not with her either. I think it's a great part of who she is as a person, and it made me even think about my life and how I'm doing, and like it never even crossed my mind that it was a topic, honestly. Like I never once thought about how I was feeling, really, because I never had to think about that. Then some events transpired that were somewhat close to me, that made me even think about it and think about others as well, especially others close to me, how they're doing, and not just myself. Somebody can take it from there, but I definitely think it's something that needs to be talked about and is a massive problem in our society. One person that I think is great is Andrew Yang, just because he talks about all the issues at hand that are going to need to be addressed in the coming society and the coming years of America and the world as a whole. And he talks about how that is one of probably the 3 most impactful problems that we need to be talking about.
So what I can tell you is I also serve on a legislative committee. And the legislative committee I serve on is obviously dealing with education. It's part of my role in the union that I'm part of. And one of the things that was brought up was mental health. It's one of our five. We have 5 things that we bullet pointed for legislators, because our committee is not legislative. It is informative for legislators on where we stand as teachers, right? So one of the things that I brought up after we had gone through the bullet points was simply that I have students that have seen the hospital in the last 2 years because of COVID. I won't list the number, but the number is, even one is too high. And I think we should never get to that point, but there's also a situation where they're on a wait list to see the counseling that they need at times. When this happened, Logan, when I was teaching you, this happened then. It's not new to COVID with that. There's been a wait list because there's a shortage of funding in that area. And the shortage of funding in that area is not due to necessarily not enough government funding. It's also not due to necessarily politicians putting funding in the wrong spot. It's due to, when we go back to this, kind of goes back to the college argument, how many people are involved in that position? How many people get that licensure? How many people, is that a profitable business for people to actually insure and encounter? And so if they don't own the means of their own production, and I'm not trying to make a socialist argument, but I think it's important to understand that there is a balance that needs to happen between capitalism and socialism in this type of realm, right? If they don't own the own means of their production, then what's the point of them doing it to get a very small share of the profit from that, when somebody that's a private business owner owns that company versus the government? And so I'm not saying the government should own it, but what I'm saying is there should be a price floor on their employees, right? And I'm saying a price floor on the employees within reason of the size of the company. So it's not like if you have a small company with 3 people working, you have to pay everybody $100,000. But that does come back to some of the economic interests, because all of this is interconnected. So now adding that on to what you were saying and kind of carrying it on a little bit, the issue the issue I brought up was the essence of what I said was that mental health should not have a wait list.
Okay, define that a little bit more.
Define wait list, or
yes, like what you're meaning by that statement, because even I'm 50-50 on it.
I get 5 days, I get 6 days, I get 7 days, I get trying to schedule something in the next 2 weeks. There's been times when we've been told that they have to wait 3 months.
Are there any nonprofit organizations, like a mentorship or something? Because I know there's people out there like me, I talk about it all the time. Like, I just know, like, my mindset in high school, your brain's not developed. You think everything is the end of the world. But when you make it out of high school and your brain matures, and like me, I wish that I could help these high schoolers, because I know what they're going through, but I don't know necessarily like the steps to take. I don't know if there's programs out there. I don't necessarily want to be a counselor, but I wish that I could mentor high schoolers.
Yeah, and there are programs out there like that. A lot of times, so for those that want to do that, calling schools and asking what they can do to be a mentor, or calling YMCAs, or calling Boys and Girls Clubs, and there's ways to get involved in that aspect of just being there, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that as like just being there. I mean that as in that's the role that you would have, is to be there, right?
Yeah.
So there are things like that. There's check-in, check-outs in certain PBS schools. And that involves people from outside the school district coming and helping them. What I'm talking about more so, it is nonprofit, but to get those people to work in that job, or to get people to want to do that job, we have to pay them.
Yeah.
And nonprofits can pay them if they have the charity from the corporate benefactors that see this as an issue. Mm-hmm. So that's where I say there's a lot of layers to this that I don't think there's a one right answer to it.
Yeah.
But my challenge to legislators was, I know, like, basically, I know they're trying to do something about mental health, and this is on the right and the left. They're all trying to do something about it. But I don't know that we can throw money at the problem. We also can't, try to think of the right way to put this so that I'm not being misconstrued. Because I have an easy way to put it, but it might be misunderstood. Um, we can't just throw money at mental health. We have to
I feel like
throw
that's what America does with anything, is just throw money at it.
that was kind of my point with education
That's
earlier.
like the American way, is fix any problems, just throw money at it.
Yep, and you end up making it as what happens in America is we make things so bureaucratic. So everything is that bureaucratic, democratic, and it's not like, I'm not saying we should be a third. I want as much democratic policy as we can possibly have. I want to have the people decide what needs to happen. The funny part about that is that we don't seem to, this isn't we here, we as a people don't seem to understand that if the workers don't control the means of production, and again, I'm not trying to be socialist sounding, but socialism only works in democracy. That's why communism doesn't work. Communism also doesn't work because capitalist countries come in and make sure it doesn't. But communism doesn't work because it's not democratic. Socialism works in a democracy, theoretically. So applying the theoretic to it, not reality. This is not reality. This has not been proven in the world. I'm not trying to make a statement that is outlandish and whatever here. But theoretically, if the workers own the means of production and get the value of their job, not the profit, they get the value of what their job's worth. And then in that case, you would have more people theoretically getting into mental health care. Now, can we prove that? No, because it's never happened.
Even I would think about getting into something like that if it would make more money. And like, it's a bad thing to say, but like, that's why, again, I'm doing this. But like, all around, it all ties into itself, like with helping people, not just with like business and like their life and figuring their life out, but a lot of that goes hand in hand with mental health, because it's much easier to figure your life out when you have a really strong and positive mindset, and you think that good things can happen for you and you don't have a victim mentality. So like, for me, I would definitely think about getting into like anything to do with teaching, counseling, helping, anything like that, if there was an easier way to do it at scale and then not feel so bad about making money off of it, which is what everybody, you know what I mean? Nobody wants to exploit people like that. And that's not what I would want to do in any means. But like, also, I don't want to make almost nothing, because that's what a lot of people are given that help and volunteer their time because they actually care about people. And that's why, like, even I was thinking about lately, like, I want to help people and help get involved with people, like help pass forward, like even like me, I don't have like a crap ton of money by any means at this point in my life, but like for Christmas this year, I wanted to help like 1 or 2 families out, somebody that needs help, like it all comes back full circle to the person I am. And a lot of people would be if it was looked at as a valuable thing to do in our society, is what I think I'm trying to say.
I'm with you. This is funny because you were getting the feeling that you wanted to help. I think this proves where we're at, you and I.
Yeah.
And we've butted heads before, Logan. We've butted heads before, and it's been fine, right?
Well, that has to happen.
It has to, right?
Yeah.
And so the thing I'm getting at is, it's funny because in December, I went out and I found a way to have so I coach baseball. I found a way to have our kids be able to sell gift cards, COVID friendly, where they don't have any contact with it. And we were able to raise over $7,000 for local business.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole time I've been talking about how that's not necessarily the route to take, right? And you're talking about how you wanted to help like 1 or 2 families. probably actually 10 to 15, because you're trying to be humble on this.
I'd love to help as many people as possible.
Exactly. So that's my point. But that's something that you would say, well, not you, but that's something that people would say, well, that's just a democratic organization trying to help the poor. And then this over here is just trying to help the rich because they're Republicans and they want these guys to have more money. No, they're all interconnected. And so like you helping those 10 families and me helping 7 businesses, putting that together, that's what creates community. And I think I hate to quote a comedian, but like Dave Chappelle's new special where he gets interviewed by Letterman. Well, it's not his special, it's Letterman's special, but when he got interviewed by Letterman in his hometown in Ohio, right? Have you seen that yet?
No, but I'm writing it down right now because I would like to watch it if it's good.
You should. It's good. It takes a while to get good, but it's good. And basically Dave's talking about the fact that like he's not famous there. He's just another person. And that whole community sticks up for no matter who's there, they're just another person. You know, and if you don't have that, then capitalism doesn't work. If capitalism is about being in charge, it doesn't work. If it's about accruing wealth, then it does. Right? And that's what we've seen. We've seen capitalism accrue wealth. And from the outset, that, you know, the Industrial Revolution, along with capitalism and capitalistic ideas, accrues wealth. Right? And then you have imperialism take place where they colonize areas of the world that aren't theirs in the sake of capitalism. So it's not capitalism at fault. It's the idea that we just are okay with human greed.
Can you explain the actual definitions of capitalism and socialism just for people to understand?
Capitalism.
This could be an hour, I'm sure.
Well, it can be. Capitalism today is not capitalism in Adam Smith's view. So capitalism in Adam Smith's view, the guy that created the idea, is total free market, no government, right? The problem with that is that we have people who called themselves capitalists come behind that. And then we had a Great Depression. And then when they redefine capitalism because the Great Depression happened, it becomes Keynesian politics, which aren't fully capitalist. And I don't think he would even call himself capitalist. But we followed Keynesian politics a lot. And actually, at the outset of Trump's presidency, he did exactly what you're supposed to do where our economy was at in cutting corporate tax. He did exactly what he was supposed to do at the outset. Did exactly what he's supposed to do according to Keynesian politics. The problem is he was running on not being Keynesian. So I don't understand it, you know, but he did what he's supposed to do in that sense. So he did, you know, Obama had raised taxes when we were in a recession. That's Keynesian politics. And when we get out of the recession, you cut the taxes. The other problem is that I do believe, and not to get us banned or whatever, but I do believe that Trump cut the wrong taxes. I believe that the tax cut made sense Keynesian wise, but he cut the wrong taxes. So to go back to your point on defining capitalism and socialism, I have to be very basic with that because there's so many strands that go one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
You probably want to edit that last part out, but I got it. But anyway, the capitalism is a pure free market society where the government's not involved and you have private business owning the means of production. Socialism is having the workers own the means of production. Those are the two basic definitions of it. They get skewed based on how you view who the worker is.
So why do so many people think socialism is bad? Like, why is it a bad term?
It's in my opinion, because we've had a little bit of a whitewash education. Mm-hmm. So in my opinion, that would be viewed more on the fact that the nations that have push socialism have been actually, you have Stalin's on the far left, authoritarian. You have Hitler on the right, but authoritarian as well. The authoritarian nations that push this idea of the workers owning the means of production use it as propaganda, and they use it to trick people into buying into it. And I believe, from what I've read and from what I've seen, I believe that that's one of the issues. I also think that socialism has been taught as a synonym for communism, and they're not the same thing.
Okay.
So you could attribute that to the establishment, correct? Then
I can, but I want to be careful on how I'm agreeing to this, because the establishment may be not the same as what you'd think the establishment would be.
interesting. Off of all of that, we could probably move to one thing that I had written down on modern issues that ties hand in hand with socialism, capitalism, government, establishment, which is inflation and the Federal Reserve. And do you believe?
Wait, is this a part where I get a time limit where I can stop talking stupid if I don't know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, if you want. I mean, we can. I think this is a massively big conversation, and you probably understand it better than I do. That's why I want to ask it, because you're an economics teacher. You were. So, I mean, I've watched a couple videos. I invest a good amount of what I have to my name right now. Inflation is an interesting topic, as well as the Federal Reserve, and just like, explain to me the Federal Reserve and how that is even a thing. How is that privately owned, and how does it just magically create money?
This is another two-word answer. If I didn't explain it, it's Alexander Hamilton. I know when he became, he wanted a stronger federal government. I'm trying to think of the right way to explain this in simple terms. He wanted a stronger federal government. His push was that we needed a national bank. We needed a strong national bank for the purpose of being able to fund the early country, right? Well, when you look at the preamble and you look at the words promote the general welfare, how do you define that?
I don't know.
I know I'm kind of challenging you. It's a surprise question, but how do you?
I feel like I'm in class.
How would you define the welfare? That's where the issue
is. Is that
definition of that courts and politicians and who gets put onto the courts by the politicians, they're going to disagree with that. But to your question on the Federal Reserve, why it's private, is that your question's more about why it's private?
Yes and no. Just in general, I want to learn more about it because it interests me, and I've watched a couple YouTube videos, but then it's like you don't know what's correct and what's not correct. But I just think it's interesting that we just continue to print money, and I'm not saying that it's the wrong thing to do right now or it's the right thing to do right now, but I'm interested into where you think that's going to lead us, into long-term success or long-term massive failure, or in between.
There's two things I have to say about this, because the Keynesian politics I talked about before, right? Obama was right in raising taxes while we were in a recession, according to Keynesian politics, not according to my belief system, but according to Keynesian politics. Trump was right, not according to my belief system, but according to Keynesian politics, to cut taxes when he got to that point. I do think he cut the wrong taxes, because cutting the richest people from taxes and keeping the poor at the same taxes makes no sense to me. I will say I actually think it's trickle up and not trickle down.
Oh my God, that's what I wanted to say. That's what I truly believe in too, and I don't know why people can't wrap their head around that.
Right, and that's where the Federal Reserve, their interest is really in just making sure that we have money.
Yeah.
Not that we have to make it. It's not that we have to get rid of it. Their interest is, in my opinion, seems to be based on their actions, not based on what they were founded on, but based on their actions, is that we have to have money to support our country. And because we're such an economic power in the world right now, second to China right now, and will be, I really do think that current policy, well, current pandemic is going to put us number one because of current pandemic. And if the United States is able to step in, because right now China is actually imperializing Africa.
Explain what that means.
Well, so imperialism is different from what I'm talking about with China, but the imperialism was the colonialization of India, Africa, Australia, ports in China, not all China, but ports in China through the Opium Wars, things like that, right? So what I mean is China's been in Africa for at least 20 years, trying to rebuild infrastructure and try and build economic interest and try and build some of that stuff. In all honesty, the fact that we were focused more on, well, not Afghanistan because they had Osama bin Laden there, but Iraq makes no sense to me. You know, there have been mistakes in those areas. Now, it does make sense to me in the historical context of things and all that stuff. Like I get it, but Africa is the place that's going to civilize, which is the worst term in the world because they are civilized. But that's going to civilize according to Western society since the 1600s. That's the place where we have to really make sure that we are trade partners with.
Where do you see us as a country in 10 years, 25 years, 50 years?
Still here.
Here?
Yeah, still here. Still as a country. I don't see us as falling apart. I think that the last election, I think the reaction after what happened 2 weeks ago shows us that we have a super majority of people in one aspect, but I also think that super majority needs to respect the rights, not necessarily the opinions. You don't have to respect opinion, but respect the rights of people on the other side that feel like it was an atrocity, or compare it to things that I don't agree with comparing it to. I think we have to respect the rights of those people. I think what's made America great in the past was that it was about and when I say in the past, what I mean is what made white Americans great in the past is that they agreed with the ability to disagree with each other. What makes America great now is that we have a very diverse group of people and young citizens that want to make America what it should be, not just what it became after World War I and World War II. I mean, we have to remember we joined both of those wars late. We didn't join those wars at the outset. We didn't come to Belgium when Hitler just took it over. We didn't go into Europe until we had to, or we felt like we needed to, or we felt like our best ally in Britain would fail, and that was our only trade ally at that time that was going to be able, well, them and China at that time, actually, right? The hate of China makes no sense to me. They've actually built our business. They built our railroads, for goodness sakes. So I don't understand any of that. But what I do understand is that we've lived in a world, a global society, for a long time. It didn't just start after World War II. We've been in a global society since since Columbus came to America. It's been global society, right? And he shouldn't be in the first one, but when he came, he brought America back to Europe, and Europe said, I want that, because they needed a different transport route because of the Crusades, and they lost. Europe lost the Crusades. And after they lose the Crusades, in a sense, I mean, you could argue that they won it, but they didn't have Jerusalem, right? And that was the whole point of it. So when they lose that, and they lose the trade routes, and they there's actually, so this is an interesting point. There's, and I'm sorry for, I'm tangenting, but
okay.
I jump around a lot with this stuff because there's so many connecting ideas, and I just keep jumping around. But it was 1493 in Spain. Might be in 1490, might have been 1489, might have been 1492, but I'm pretty sure it's 1493. The Pope allowed for this, and bishops in Spain and the king in Spain, they started ordering the removal of Islam and Jewish people from Spain because they happened to win the battle, right? And we call that civilized, but we don't call it civilized that the Mongols would conquer a territory and let the people have whatever faith they wanted to have. Now, the Mongols also destroyed you if you did not give them, like, did not allow for peace, right? But there's two sides to all of this. So you have to look, I really think we have to look at this from a standpoint of what human nature is. And I've seen people talk about human nature as greedy and as selfish and as all of that. I refuse to believe that. I don't think we are greedy and selfish. I think we're greedy and selfish because we've been brought up in an environment that's greedy and selfish.
Summer, you had
I
something?
agree.
Or no?
I agree with it.
Man,
I think everybody is a result of the situations they've been through, and they shape who you are and the decisions you make and the thoughts that you think. And I think this relates into all of the blame and judgment and the hating of people and all of the tension that's going on between Democrats and Republicans and this and that. And I think that we all need to do a better job of putting ourselves into other people's shoes and realizing why people are the way that they are. Like, think about, okay, a person is doing this and saying this because they've been through this in their lifetime. So if you were put into their shoes, if you went through every single situation that they were in, you would probably be saying and doing the same exact things.
Right. And I think that leads to some other, I mean, it leads to a ton of topics. And I won't get specific on any of those. I just want to say I agree with you 100%. The question I have for both of you would be, I'm hoping it's simple. Like, it doesn't need to be complicated or overthought or anything like that. Just how do we as a nation, understanding that we're talking about education, healthcare, environment, foreign affairs. There's still wars in the Middle East, but COVID has just slowed them down. Like, we just haven't talked about them because of COVID, because they're not going to go to war when it's going to kill them to be in a battle. You know what I mean? We have the Russia protests. We have China, which is they are hiding some things from the public. They hid the coronavirus from the WHO early on, from what I've read and what I've understood. But that doesn't mean that China was wrong in doing it, because it affects their business, which is a communist business that has capitalistic intentions for the government, not for the people. You know what I mean? So there's such a weird, the world, I don't think we're going to solve the world in one conversation, obviously, but I'm just, I guess my question is more like, what is it that that people need to know at the ages of 18, 19, and 20? Because I'll tell them what I think, but I can't promise that I know, but I'll tell them what I think the right path forward is. And that's, I think, the conversations that we all need to have. And I also think that this conversation would have, like, we should have this conversation again, in my opinion, with somebody who doesn't look like us.
Absolutely. I mean,
Very
we can
true.
do that. I'm sure. I mean, we could have conversation. We could go for hours, and I'm sure we can. So
I'll be up till 3 a.m. I don't care. It's
Me
finals
too.
week. I get to sit and watch people take tests. I'm fine.
So what question, wrapping that all up, what question do you want to ask us so I can respond to that?
That's
After
a good
this question, I'm
because
gonna pee.
I was going off on like 5 tangents in that one statement.
I got it. I figured out what you were saying. He's saying, what should he teach to these young people to help bring them up and be better than what the world is right now? My answer is going to be really cheesy. I'm going to tell you that much. It might not seem like it's achievable, but in my mind, that's what it is. Logan, you can go first if you want to.
What should you teach people? Is that what you're saying? 18, 19, 20, correct? Or whatever, roughly age group?
Basically,
high schoolers.
Like,
yeah.
Okay.
What do kids need to know to be successful in this world, according to what you guys believe? And then, Summer, I would say that actually brings me back to the justice point, right? It always seems unachievable, but if we're not working towards it, we'll never get there.
Yeah.
I think that that depends on what you define success as, and I think until we define success as happiness instead of wealth, or I think that whole question for me definitely comes back to that statement right there. Is it depends on the way you define how to be successful in this world. If it's wealth, I don't think we ever get there 100%. If it's happiness, I think we get closer to that. I believe in both, and I think that there's a balance. I definitely don't have the right answer for any of this. What I wish I was taught, I don't know, but then that's controversial too. What I wish I was taught is that there is much bigger things in this world than your small personal issues. So you could maybe take a step back, and I think it all comes back to, for me, this is very unstructured, but it's mindset, and it's the way I come
exactly what I had down.
Really?
Yeah.
I think it comes back to mindset, no matter if you want to be rich, if you want to be poor, if you want to be happy, if you want to be unhappy, if you want to travel the world, if you want to stay in the same town you grew up in. It all comes back to your mindset on things, and I think that's not taught in school. I think speaking things into existence is absolutely a phenomenon that happens in the country and is not taught. I think believing, as cheesy as it sounds, and I'm not like a person like this, believing in yourself, honestly, is massive for teaching kids that, you just got to do things. And I think people don't want to do things because their mindset, they have like a victim mentality, or I can never get to this point mentality, where like me, I just like to do things. Like I like to talk to people. I like to it all comes back to me too, for like when I say go get a job to somebody and they're like, I can't get a job, I applied for 2 jobs. And I'm like, if you just stand up, walk to 10 stores, you'll get a job. Talk to somebody at the store, say you need a job. I think it all comes back to that, and you don't need to have a job, which is why this is such a hard topic to teach. But I think teaching kids that it's okay to put yourself out there and do things is the best thing you could teach, honestly, because
I have to cut you off. I'm sorry, I have to cut you off there, because this is something I wanted to bring up for probably the last 45 minutes, and we got off on a tangent about politics, and if you guys want to cut all the politics stuff out, I'd be fine with that. I really would. I want you to take what's meaningful.
Leave it all.
I say we leave all of this except the yeah.
But the question is really, do you remember doing the Voice Your Opinion project?
You're gonna hate this, but not 100%. No.
No, that's fine. I'm not gonna hate it. Because you were a sophomore when we did it, right?
Yep.
But do you remember the concept behind it?
It's so hard, and that's why it's a hard thing to teach, because like even though you were trying to do good, it already slipped my mind.
Well, and
Explain.
but that's expected. So the voice your opinion project was a project that I did while I taught U.S. citizenship, which is basically civics class. And the whole idea behind it was that kids could pick any topic. There was there was not a lot of gray area. There was not a lot of area where they couldn't do. Obviously, there's certain things like
That just can't be brought up in school. Yeah, absolutely.
But like abortion was not one of them. Abortion was one that was brought up every year. Gay marriage was brought up every year. We hit the hard topics a lot of times, but there are certain ones that are just like outlandish and inappropriate for any society to have.
Absolutely.
So those were the only ones that were outlawed. But in most of those conversations, a lot of times it ended up in a political viewpoint, right? And I always thought it funny because a lot of those that I thought of as just I had a preconceived notion that we get this about everybody, right? Of not wanting to of thinking that drugs should be illegal, for example, right? They'd come up and say that drugs should be legal. And I don't know what their argument's going to be, but I always told everybody that I'm going to argue against you and make sure you understand your topic. I want you to actually voice your opinion. I'm going to argue against you. And I'm sorry, Logan, to say this, but I don't think anybody ever beat me in a debate. It might have been more charismatic, but it was 15-year-olds versus me as a teacher. So I had an advantage.
Yeah.
So that, I think you probably beat me today if we were to debate a topic that we disagreed on. But that's the point, is it was meant to have people voice their opinion and then solidify their beliefs based in fact and knowledge. And I remember I got, we don't need to know who they are, but it was 2 4.0 students that were supporting the legalization of marijuana. And I actually personally, the only people that don't want it is the government and black markets. So that tells you that it probably should be legal.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at the argument that they made, they told me that 3% of people weren't, or 3% of people got addicted to it, but 25% of people got addicted to tobacco, right? Something along those stats aren't perfect or exact, but something along those lines. And so my argument was, well, yeah, it's because it's illegal. So if it was legal, wouldn't it be the same? How can you tell me that it wouldn't be the same? And that was the only argument I made, and they couldn't defend that, but they could defend everything else that I brought up. And so I think those are the things that I did as a teacher, as with sophomores, that they're a little borderline. I mean, like there's room there that I can put myself in jeopardy because I'm arguing against kids that really believe in something, but I'm arguing against everybody, even if I do believe in them. And I do agree with them. And so the whole point of the assignment, though, is to solidify beliefs, to solidify how we move forward in society with how we feel. And I think America has, as a whole, and this is where like the millennial generation gets blamed. I'm in the middle of the millennials. Like there's 38-year-olds that claim to be millennials. There's 24-year-olds that claim to be millennials, and I'm 30. So I look at this group and I'm like, I don't agree with any of you, but I'm also a part of you, and I get blamed with everything you guys do. And the biggest issue is really that people just don't listen to each other. We have to be able to, like, one of the things that I appreciate the most that you did as a student is you would challenge me to tell me, or to tell you why. You would make sure I didn't just say something to say it. You would always make me say why. And I remember one specific conversation that led to like a whole class discussion, and it was just about like saying hi in the mall.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, like like you and I were on the same page in honesty. You were reacting as a 15-year-old, and I was reacting as like, I can use this as a teaching moment. And then it just backfired on both of us.
I just like having discussion, and I like, that's the same thing. Like you say, you'll argue any topic just to make sure people understand it. And I'll argue the devil's advocate, and like even that gets me in trouble with her too, because like I just like to talk. So I'm gonna have that opposing viewpoint of you no matter what. No, even if I don't believe in it, because I think it forces good conversation so you can understand both sides of things and understand the why. And that's like the Sadhguru crap, and like there's an interview with him. You should check him out, Sam. He's an interesting guy. He's like a Gandhi type of guy. And
Sadhguru, you said? Sadhguru?
yeah, Sadhguru. I can text you a link to an interview with him. But
I feel like I've seen this name more, but I don't recognize it. So that's gonna be but I'm with you. I'm sorry, keep going.
So it's interesting because that guy, I mean, it's been a bit since I've watched him, but he's like if you just stop thinking you know everything and you actually ask why, like you might start to understand some things, and then there'll be less division because you're actually open to understanding things. Like instead of just,
and there's a difference between knowing and what else?
knowing and believing.
Knowing and believing.
Yeah, I think that's it. I should have brushed up a little bit. I just had to bring him into the conversation because it's interesting that you say stuff like that. And I think that this whole wraps around to what I would tell you to teach kids, or what anybody should be helping kids with. And that's just, I think, like being open to having the conversations and being open to putting yourself out there, which is having the conversation. But as a whole broad spectrum, that could mean putting yourself out there to get a job, putting yourself out there to talk to somebody, putting yourself out there to do whatever you want to do, go to the gym for the first time, read a book for the first time. Like, it's okay to try things and not like things. It's okay to feel like you don't belong in something, but still do it. And then maybe you do belong in something, you know?
I think everybody just fears judgment.
Right. And I think to bring this full circle to like, because I know we had like 18 bullet points that we had discussed, right? And we got off at a tangent that didn't even hit, probably 9 of them, but that's and that's fine. That's fine. I think the real key point to in my opinion, I'm not that old, right? Like 30 is old. To a 17-year-old, 30 is like ancient. I remember that. When I was 17, I was like, you haven't been here you don't know my life. Like, it's been 13 years. We don't listen to Usher anymore, So I get that side of it, but I also think that it's important to understand that when we look at what the elders say, and I really shouldn't quote it because there are elders for me, that if I did this, I don't want to disrespect them with that, right? But for me, if you were to say my elder and put me in there, I would say, please quote me, like do the hand quote, because I haven't lived long enough to really see how the outcome comes from it, right? But I think the really important part to take out of all of our conversation is that nobody has the right answer. The answer really lies in how we treat each other, how we move with each other, and how we respect each other's opinions. But we also have to be real with, if this is a fact, it's a fact. Like that's something that cannot be negotiated. If this is something that actually happened, this is something that's real, and you're going to argue with me about that, then we have to cut that person off and not give them a chance to have power, because those are the people that are dangerous. The people that are safe, the people that will help benefit our country, the people that will have us be here in 100 years are those that have something that this is factual, this is real, this is what it is. That dog was in the other screen earlier. I'm telling
you. Can you tell we're in the same house?
Yeah, that dog's awesome. But the problem is we don't agree on what facts are. And until we can do that, I can't even do my job. Like, I don't mean that as in a negative way. Like, I can do my job, but my job's going to be heard by some and not by others. And my job is to teach the truth. So that's kind of where I get back to like the beginning of this, we can choose our college based on our money, but it's, and then we also talked earlier about standards and how we define kids and where they understand stuff. That's all from standards that were federally mandated, right? And who made those standards and who put those standards out there. So we have to understand the key. I'm really trying to say this right, but I'm going to end up being just opinionated.
That's okay. That's what these are for.
You have to understand the key to student success. And it isn't so much in how many vocab words they know. It's, in my opinion, it's more in the fact that they understand how to make it in the new world, in the current world. And the current world today is not the 1950s. It's not the 1960s. We have too many people living in the 1950s and 1960s. We just do. We have too many people that think that our world today is the same exact thing and has the same exact cost benefit ratio and has the same exact politicians and has the same exact, we have to get rid of R&D in the sense of that's what I'm going to vote for. But we have to jump into that race and have the real conversations and be willing to put ourselves on the line. How many of us want to do that? Because this country is run by business.
What would you do to fix the education system if you were in charge?
If I was in charge?
Yeah. Let's say they hand it to you. You're fully in charge. You can restructure it however you want. What's ideal for you?
I'm not just a representative. Because I was going to say, if I'm a representative, I'm going to talk about it and I'm going to have the same issue I'm having right now. Right?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I hate the education system. I like education and I like learning. And I don't think all the teachers believe in what is going on right now, but they're just trying to do their part and help, in any way they can. But if you were to restructure the education system, how would you do that?
Well, this is a tough question, and I would have to almost put on a blurry face for this. But the biggest thing I would do in education is I would stop blaming. I would stop blaming two different segments of it. I would stop blaming the politics of it, and I would stop blaming the teachers. I also don't say that to say that we should blame administration. It's not administration's fault. But I would stop blaming those that are trying to do good. But I would also say it's the same, and I said this right at the outset, right? We have to hold people with licensures accountable to being willing to have their licensures. And right now, we can get those licensures through, we have to renew our licensures as teachers, right? So we go through PD, we go through all this stuff. We have to stop not holding people accountable. But you don't do that by disbanding a union. You don't do that by disbanding, unions don't protect bad workers. They tell them to fix their stuff. What people don't know about what happens inside of a union is that, as a faculty rep, for example, or as a government relations guy at ours, when a former president of a different union at a smaller school, I would go to people and say, you're wrong. You need to stop what you're doing. You're making me look bad. Knock it off. And that's what unions protect kids and teachers when it comes to education system. They do it in different ways. They do it in ways the public can't see. And I'm not going to say they're all perfect because no human system is perfect. But there is situations where those unions do call out their own, right? There's only one union I haven't seen do that. And I'm not going to mention it because we all know what I'm saying. But that doesn't tell, I still support that union and those people, right? I still, not the people that are doing the things they shouldn't do, but I still support what it's about. The purpose of a union is to make sure the profession lasts and gets paid its value. So to answer your question, how you change education, you pay people their value. I can tell you right now, the first school I was at, the one I taught you in, I made $32,425 for 4 years. I moved jobs and got a master's, and I made 55,000 and then 62,000.
So are we getting into the
That
teachers
was
underpaid discussion?
It will be down the road, but right now the master's is more expensive than my graduate degree, and the master's was half the time.
Do you agree with
Oh man, there's so many.
getting paid more because you have your master's? Like, do you think that made you, how should I put it? Made you
to
if there's no reward to getting it, nobody would do it, and that's where the problem lies in. Right. So we're talking about skill versus education in that sense. I do think that when we talk about teachers and we talk about skill, that's the same thing. And I also think that education is not something that you just have to know something about to do. You have to have an art to it, because sometimes you have to deal with Logan.
Yeah,
so
that would be difficult.
You can't just argue with kids, right? You can't just tell them they're wrong. Just give feedback. You have to actually have an art to how you teach. And to me, teaching is a profession that has a very artistic quality to it, with also the education knowledge behind the subject area that you're teaching. You're not, well, people don't, I mean, people know this because they have kids and they go through the school system, but teachers do a lot more than just tell you what you're supposed to know. That's actually like the smallest part of my job. I can set my lesson plan up in 15 minutes. It's how I'm going to implement it, how I'm going to make sure that every kid gets it. It's how I'm going to fill out the paperwork about kids that have SPED. It's about how I'm going to fill out or answer to a parent that I know is going to disagree with what I'm saying, even though what I'm saying is the facts. It's how it's all that stuff that makes the job more difficult. It's also the in this world right now, the COVID stuff, like I literally sit on this couch and I stare at a screen and I wait for people to show up. No, I have a lot of kids that show up to my classes because we did synchronous learning in our hybrid model still. For myself, I still allowed them that opportunity. So I have that. It wasn't a mandate, but my kids still showed up because they wanted to be there and see people, right? Which is a benefit to the kids. That's a credit to the kids. Nothing to do with me. But I sit on this couch for 8 hours a day and I stare in the screen and I teach my lesson. I give the assignment. I wait for the kids to do it. I grade it. And then I sit here again for 2 hours later at night grading what they did, right? And so now that's a 10-hour day. And when we're in person, it's when we're in person, I get to coach and do other things. So when we're in person, it's a longer day, but I'm doing other things besides those two things, right? Some teachers are doing their planning the same day that they're giving their lessons, and then so different people's plans and strategies give different results on what that time looks like, which is part of why it's a salary job, right? But that's
what are the pros and cons of things going online?
For teaching, I actually think it's good for half our student body and bad for the other half. And I think going back to school is bad for half our student body and good for the other half. So I think when you look at that standpoint, we're looking at a situation where, and this is why I said we're going to see a whole different world coming out of this. There's some kids that benefit from going online. There are some kids that it benefits them, and we can't deny that either. And it's the same thing I talked about with the business world earlier. But it all comes back to mental health. What helps a kid's mental health? And then how does that mental health help translate into academic success, where they can either get into the career path they want to go into or the college path they want to go into? So if it's the career path, then if we're talking about a kid that wants to weld, and being where I am, there's a specific college that is actually like #1 in the state for welding in our same town. I would tell that kid to go to that college for 1 year, get his welding degree, and get the heck out of there, right? If we're talking about a kid that wants to get into business, like a Logan, I'll be honest, Logan, you needed college, but you didn't need to pay for it. That's the issue, right? You needed it to sharpen your mind, to get the opportunities to be a part of to be the president of your associate. You know what I mean? Like, you needed that kind of stuff, but you didn't need to pay for it because you already showed that that's where you would be. Now, the problem is, how do we show that that's where you would be if you came from, in recent events, if you came from South Minneapolis, Henry Sibley, or, you know what I mean? I think I have the wrong high school with that one. I meant, I think it's Washburn. Maybe it's Washburn. I don't know the right high school. And I don't want to sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, but
we need to pause for a sec. I need to take Ozzy outside. He's really ticking me off.
Didn't he already go out?
No, I just let him out like on our porch, but there's no grass there.
Yeah, when he came
up. Give me a sec. I have more questions and we can keep going, but I gotta take him out because he's whining.
Yeah, I
gotta pee too.
Yeah, all right. I'll be back. I'll be back in like 5 minutes.
My video until you guys get back because I don't like looking at myself.
All right, I'll be back in like 5 minutes.
All right, sounds. You will have to. Can I ask for one thing?
Absolutely.
Can you edit out anywhere where I sound stupid?
Well, I mean, that just happens, and it happens with me. It happens with everybody, and I think that's based on people's opinion.
It does. It does. It does. I'm just kidding. Anywhere where I sound like I don't understand the point. I do get all this stuff, but I kind of rambled a little bit on a couple times.
Well, that's what happens though in long form conversation, and that's why like I wanted to put it out this way because I like to do it. And okay, no, I mean,
that's fine. I'm all in on that. That's fine.
We can dive right back in. There's so many things. Do you know, because you do Zoom for class, if I schedule this to end at midnight, will it cut us off at midnight or will it just keep going? Is that just like
I think Zoom will. I have Google Meets. So Google Meets doesn't have an end time.
Okay. It'll keep going.
It will keep going?
All right, just in case we get there, I wanted to make sure.
I know.
I don't know if we will.
I know from my tutoring.
Okay. Yeah, she tutored economics. You know that?
Nice.
So don't ask me anything about economics because I couldn't tell you now. But back then, I knew a little bit.
Here's the real question. How far off have you viewed me to be?
What?
How far off have you viewed my opinions to be?
Not super far. I mean, I think that most of my economics teachers have been extremely far right. And
all of them are.
You don't seem to be that way. You're definitely more middle. So it's a little off, but
here's what I'll tell you is that Logan had me and I taught economics from the textbook, right? Because that's what my job is to teach economics from the standards in the textbook. So Logan, would you have viewed me as far right or far left in high school? Not now, after our conversation so far, but at that time.
Probably right.
Based on what the information that was being presented was, right?
Yeah.
So does the economic textbook define socialism as the workers owning the means of production, or does it define socialism as the government doing it?
The government doing it.
Right. That's why we have people in a position that do not have a full understanding about it. But at the same time, I wouldn't say that the workers owning the means of production gives anybody the want to own the business, right? Like if let's say you own this podcast right now, Summer and I own the means of incentive. Are you doing it?
No.
Exactly.
Well, okay, wait. Yes, okay, I didn't answer that correctly. Yes, I would be doing this.
No, it's not about her being like your partner or not. It doesn't matter. It's about, so let's take it from podcast. If it was an ice cream shop, you own the ice cream truck.
Yeah.
And Summer and I were working the ice cream truck, and we said we're going to get every dollar value that we own from being the value of you making ice cream cost $5 versus $1.50. Well, that would mean that we get paid $2.50 and you get paid $1 because we're doing all the work. But you put the idea out there, right? Kind of like your buddy that bought in as an investor to your t-shirt stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the t-shirt stuff is the wrong word, but you know what I mean, right?
Mm-hmm.
To your clothing items.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's how the stock market works. We have all of us just putting money in there and hoping to get cents back on the dollar. You know, cents as it could be 25, 30. If we put in $100, that's $35 per day. That's a big wage. That's good on the stock market, right? But the point is, we're putting money in there. Well, right now we're talking about the stock market. The stock market isn't our economy. The stock market,
okay. That's what I mean. I like the stock market and I like making money from it, but that's what I think is ridiculous, how people measure our economy based off the stock market, when I'm pretty sure like the statistic is like crazy. Like only like the top 1% of citizens have us like more than like tiny dollar amount in the stock market. Like it only represents the top of our economy.
Well, I think that comes from private investment, right? So I will say, like, I have a 403b through the school.
Yep.
And that has money in mutual funds, which is stock market based.
Yep.
But it's not like blue chip stocks,
Mm-hmm.
right? If I want to get really aggressive, I could say, hey, I only want all that in blue chip stocks, and I could do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not making any money off putting $100 into blue chip stocks.
Yeah.
You know, and I can only put so much into that 403b. So how this relates, I think, going back to the college people, right? So not to be bouncing back and forth, but I think the bouncing back and forth is good because all this stuff is interconnected. We go back to college. That's the start of our adult life, right? That's the start of our, you know, we just graduated high school. We're going into our future. Am I supposed to do HVAC where I can get a job at 18 without training? And then I'll get training in the job, right? But I won't have the college training or have to make college employment or college, payment. Or do I go to college and I look at how I own my own business and the business side of things? Or do I look at, you know, something I need a licensure in? So that'd be teaching, doctor, nurses. The decision there really is based on cost benefit, which is a whole full circle now. So what is the cost benefit of the opposite? What's the cost benefit of not going to college if you don't have the willpower to do it?
I mean,
time and money.
Yeah, it depends how you value your time.
Right, but if you don't have the willpower to do it, so if you're just not going to college because you're going to say, I just want to work this job because I don't have to go to college to do it, and I don't have to pay the money up front, and now I'm making $2,000 every 2 weeks. Well, I'm now making more than that. I wasn't before, right? Originally, I was making less, but now I am. And so what people don't realize is that the years from 30 to 60, that's where the money's made. And it's based on what you did from years 20 to 30. Because 18 and 19, a lot of people do dumb stuff. 20 to 25, a lot of people do dumb stuff. But the money is made from when you understand what the job that you want to do is and how you're going to do it. Now, as an entrepreneur, which I know you are, because you've got like, is it 3 businesses right now? If you include the podcast as a business?
Yeah. I mean, they come and they go, but that's the nature of entrepreneurship.
Right. So if we just say you had one business and all your focus is in that business, how do you make money? Only if people buy the product that you're selling, right?
Yeah.
So if you apply that to a college degree, how do you make money? Only if people are buying the product that you're selling, which is the licensure that you're getting. If they're not buying it for more than what your license is worth, then it's not worth it.
You wouldn't be in that business.
Right. So you have to get into a business that's going to allow you to do that. Now, I say that because we need teachers. I say that not knocking that profession, but if you're going to go to college to be a teacher, then go to college to be a teacher.
You make
Don't
me
go to
want to be a
college-
teacher. I just said that to
Well-
Logan. I was like, God damn it. Going back to school.
well, I would actually love to hear what you're saying there, because I think there's a lot of people that would hear that and say that they would hear that and go, I'm not going to be a teacher. And I'm worried about saying that, because that's the whole thing that we need right now is teachers in the scheme of scheme is the wrong word, in the idea that educating our young with facts, and putting people that are younger in positions of teaching authority, which is a different authority than authority, right? But the ability to share those facts and have those conversations and do things like this, even if anybody disagrees with me, at least I'm doing it. That's the big thing.
Exactly.
Do it. And be willing to put themselves out there on the table and have kids challenge them and be able to challenge kids back and do it in a way that allows for constructive regrowth, which is what we've lost with our political divide. You can blame whoever you want to do that with. But my question goes to you then, Summer, and what you meant by that, because I think that is a key piece to the healing of our industrial way of doing education and trying to change some of the old heads into doing what would actually work.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are too focused on money, Logan being one of them sometimes. But I don't think people should knock being a teacher just because they don't make enough money. There's always ways to make more money. We're in the age of side hustles, like that you can go work on the weekends to make more money. Like if teaching is something that you see yourself loving and doing, don't not do it just because of the money. So that's where my head's
Can I say something that will agree and disagree with you in some ways?
Yep.
Can I challenge this a little bit? But I also agree with your statement, like your sentiment. Your sentiment is good, right?
Yeah.
Like the idea is that we're doing it because we want to make a difference in the world.
Yeah.
But also what people got into on a false premise, in some cases a false premise that this would give them job security in a future.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so now there's no longer a for real tangible future in it, because costs have to be cut somewhere, and where costs can be cut. Now in Minnesota, there's only 3 places where they can cut costs, because there's only 3 places that they can actually control. The Constitution in Minnesota, there's only 3 things they can do. Now they can interpret it to make it bigger than this, but they only have 3 things that they can actually do. It's education, it's public transportation, it's public buildings. That's it. That's all that Minnesota's legislature is allowed to tax for, according to the Constitution. Now, you can interpret things outside of that don't seem to translate, but there's ways to make it translate. Just like public general welfare of the preamble, right? So the point in saying that, though, is that I think many teachers feel the same way that you're talking about. Like, we can find ways to make it work, so we want to help our kids. We want to do this. I think we all feel that way. I think we also realize now that we've been in it, we need to make money.
Yeah.
We need to have some way of acquiring wealth, because we have kids too. And our kids end up being, and this is something I think Logan can attest to this, being a student of former teachers' kids, right? Like a classmate of former teachers' kids. They often feel the pressure that they have to have the best grades in the class, when really they should feel the pressure of being the best kid they can be, which is a whole different thing, right? And I think sometimes teachers can put those kids in different bubbles, and they end up in a tough place. part of the reason for that is because the teachers want them to have a better life than they do. They want them to be able to provide more than they can for their kids. And that's the same thing across professions. It's the same thing for somebody who works 5 jobs and they're all minimum wage, but that's the only jobs they can get at that point, right? They might be the hardest worker in the world, but they just can't interview well. And so they're stuck working at McDonald's and Culver's and, so, well, I don't know your background.
No, not that. When you said not being able to interview well, I was like, ooh.
Well, if this was an interview, I think you'd be doing well. But I think the big thing is just we have to look at it from a perspective of when it comes to teacher salary. I think teachers want to get paid, and I think we're starting to get to the point. And I say we, I think it's a collective thing. I could be wrong, but I do think we're starting to get sick of the point of, well, you got into it because you love kids. Well, yeah, but I'm getting paid the same wage as it would take me to have 2 kids in my house. And I think that's not fair to other professions, but I do think it's a fair thing for us to question, right? So like, I'll give you guys the numbers. So I had it was 36,000 in debt after my first college after 5 years. So that's actually not terrible. That's actually below average by a lot. And that was because of scholarships. It was 5 years because I was playing baseball and I didn't want to do student teaching while I was playing baseball in the spring. So I took an extra year and I got a minor in coaching at the same time, and I got licensures, and I did some other extra stuff to make that year worth it versus just like trying to drag it out for a year and pay all that money for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got my job, and the first year it was $32,425. The second year was $33,145. And now, after moving jobs and getting a master's degree, it's now, 50. I'm actually blanking on the number. It was upper 50s last year. Okay, so 50s and 60s is where it'll end up in the 70s. Okay. Here's the issue. That master's that took 2 years, and I could only do it online because I couldn't afford to go to a school because I didn't have the money I didn't have enough money to make to afford to drive to a school on a Wednesday night and do it. And I also had jobs that were making the extra money for my family with young kids in a different city. I couldn't have at the time it was a 1.5-year-old and a girl that was about to be born, right? I couldn't afford to drive anywhere. I live in Cleveland. I shouldn't have said that. I live in a small town outside of the place that I want to go. And so Cleveland is obviously not in Ohio. But I couldn't afford the gas money it took me to get to those classes. So I had to do it online, which meant I had to take the Fed loans out to do it. So my master's program put me over 80,000. So that means my master's program cost me 45,000, 55,000, if my math's right? So about 50,000. It cost me that much to do 2 years of online where I never stepped foot in the building.
That brings me
insane.
That brings me to a question that I actually wrote down in my notes is like, how do you see the cost of education changing based on the online world? And do you think it will? And then how do you think it does change? Because obviously they don't want to change it. Like, that's a problem I had too, is me going fully online to MSU. I feel like our tuition should have been adjusted based on that for sure, because we didn't get to use any of the facilities, as well as it's just ridiculous. It is ridiculous.
This is the funny part. My sister is 1 year younger than you, and she's also online at MSU.
Mm-hmm.
She lived in Portland for the last 6 months and was at MSU online. It is cool, but she's back now, and so she's going to move back in with the friends that she was with, and I'm proud of her for that. But it's still, it's that whole experience is just not the same, right? And it really shouldn't cost the same because nobody has to come into work. Like they can be at home and they don't have to pay gas to get there, right? It shouldn't cost the same. But as a teacher, I don't want to say that because I'm doing more work right now than I was before.
Yeah,
I'm doing,
absolutely.
I'm doing way more work right now. And it's probably saving my marriage that I'm doing more work right now because I'm not annoying my wife. Like I'm
But
not
you're also probably a good hardworking teacher. There's a lot of teachers and professors that went online and then just shoved kids and young adults out of the way. And like that was a lot of my personal experience with it. Was I didn't feel like teachers or my professors were putting in that extra effort. Then I would be okay with paying the same amount, but I was not getting the same effort or even close to the same effort.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you because I'm not in your experience. What I will say is that my experience with online learning before COVID, so like that was I was distance learning before COVID with the 2-year master program, and that cost me over double what I had paid for my 5-year bachelor program, right? So to me, I felt some of that same thing of like, you're going to put me in a breakout room and have me talk to other students for 35 minutes, and then I'm going to come back and hear you tell me and wrap this up for 5. Like that, I feel like I felt like that wasn't worth that either. So I understand where that comes from. As a person that's teaching the high school kids, I'm going, in all honesty, like, so this is different from you because you're not in high school. But for me, teaching 9th graders, I'm going, one of the biggest things they need right now is to actually talk to each other. Like from what they're telling me, they just need to see each other on a screen and talk to each other. And so there are times when I'm like, today's day is read this 1-page article and talk about it for 30 minutes. And when I go in the groups, because they're not gonna read that, they're gonna read that in 2 minutes, they're not gonna talk at all. So I go in the groups and I go, hey guys, I'm trying to give you time to actually hang out and see each other, like talk, just talk, because I think that's an important part too. Now, academically, is that doing anything for them? Yes, in the sense that it is allowing them to have the conversation about, because that 1 page, if that's the day that I'm bringing up, that 1 page is all I need to teach that day. And if we were in class, we're going to read that one, like Logan knows this, if we're in class, we're going to read that page in 1 day, and we were going to have a 30-minute conversation about it in class, and I was going to debate it, and it was going to get on a tangent, and we're going to just go with it because that's what kids learn from, right? But when it comes to college, I think that's different because in college, you're not stuck online. You pretty much have a roommate. You pretty much have somebody that you can talk to. You have somebody that you can be with. So there's a different, I think there's a different perspective there from that point. But I don't think you're wrong either. I think there are some people that go over the top with it and give too much work, and I think there's some people that give too little work. And I'm hoping I'm hitting the balance. I could be one of those that's doing one or the other. I wouldn't know that unless a kid told me, but they haven't told me yet. I've given like 5 polls this semester, and I was like, "No, you're doing great." So I'm not sure if that means I'm giving them nothing or if that means I'm giving them just what they, So it's that's the obvious criticism I have to have for myself, but no, I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I can't fully agree with it because I know the people that I work with are not in the same boat of just trying to do as little as possible. I think many of us are trying to find the most in the high school level. I can't speak for your classes, but in the high school level, a lot of us are speaking to each other about how do we minimize quote unquote work without getting rid of those standards, without getting rid of what they need to know, because it's also not fair to kids to like, and I say I'm 30, so I say kids in the sense of 23 and under, right? No offense to anybody, but how do we minimize your screen time and put you in more social situations? Like podcasts are a great way to do that. And one of the reasons I want to jump on that, I'll be completely honest. One of the reasons I want to jump on this is because not only was Logan a student of mine, not only do I support the podcast business, and not only do I want to be a part of being in the podcast stuff, but I also know that this is something that is beneficial to me. I can voice things out. And you know what? I don't have to read the comments because you guys have to post it. So I get to just say what it's a fun thing. So that's one thing that's nice about it. The other thing is it is something that I've always wanted to do, and I will say this right now, and I know the conversation's not over, and I think Logan's waiting to ask a question. I can see it in his face. But I do hope that you let me back on.
That's what I was gonna say.
Not being too controversial. So
no, that's what I was gonna say. Is one, is there any topics that we missed that you want to cover this time? Two, Summer, is there any questions that you want to ask? I have a question to end it on at the end. We can have you on for sure again because there's much more to discuss and we could go forever. But I'm getting tired. I'm sure you got to get up in the morning, and I do too. And it's easier to do it in chunks because people won't listen to 8 hours straight. So it's easier if we just have you back on after the first 2.5 hours. So,
as
5 hours later.
So one is there any other topics you'd like to cover tonight directly? Two, Summer, any questions? And then I have a final question once we're done with any of that. But as long as that goes, it's fine. If you have more we want to talk about, we can definitely do it.
No, I do think that the how do you put the Q&A we discussed the other day, right? Like with just like if you ask a question, give me like 10 seconds, and I have to give my first initial reaction to it. I think that would be something that'd be cool in this, but you have to do the editing, so I'm not gonna tell you that we should. Like, if you want to do that, I'm willing to do that. We can pick like 5, something less than a minute. But that's it. I honestly, my last, if I was to give final comments, it would be that nobody has the right answers, and my job as a teacher is to teach what I know is to be fact, period, and then let kids come up with their own assumptions. I think that's something that's really important that we all understand. But my job as a person is to speak my opinion. And I think sometimes we put those two things with teachers in a tough spot. It's okay if I don't agree with your opinion. And Logan can attest to this. I have never told anybody that their opinion is wrong. The one time that we had the dust up, right? Like the talk, the conversation that ended up being like a whole class thing, right? Was really just about our difference of opinion on an issue that had no fact to it, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't, and it was funny because it just led to a debate. It didn't lead to a dust up. It wasn't like you and I started fighting each other. Mm-hmm. It was just the girls were on my side and the guys were on your side, and that was it.
Summer, do you have anything else?
I still needed to answer the question that he asked earlier.
You can answer that now.
I never got to that because we went off on 1,000 tangents. So
we did, and I'm glad we did. I think
yes. But I agree with Logan with it being everybody is their individual self, and it comes down to everybody's mindset. So if I could have been taught one thing in high school that I wasn't, it would be gratitude, affirmations, manifestation. Just, I wish I would have been given resources that would teach me how to have a more happy and positive mindset. Because there's a lot of people that grow up in families that aren't positive and aren't happy. And to have those resources coming from somewhere would have been very helpful. So then when you're talking more macro sense, I feel like if every kid is taught how to be more positive, you would have a more positive population as a whole, leading to better mental health, probably less war, less hatred, less judgment, less sadness.
That's the hope, right? I actually love what you're saying. I do. That's the hope. That's the thing that gives us hope, is that that's what we can do with all that stuff. Um, can I tell you my initial reaction?
Yeah.
Who is in charge of doing that? Because depending on who you put in charge of doing that will change how it's done.
Yeah. I think
And
I think
yeah,
us as individuals can take it into our own hands, and we can make as big of an impact as we can and share it and tell the next person to share it. And that's what we can do.
That's fair.
I love what you're saying there, because I think that's the point. I think that's what we need to do. I think that's it, and that's what this is starting to do, right, Logan? That's what part of the goal of Next Step U is to make sure that we have a place where people can bring honest opinions and have them heard and have them be um, validated, but not necessarily be confirmed if they're not true, right? We can validate what people feel without telling them that, oh, yeah, you're right, we should have stormed the Capitol, right? But you can also validate that they felt the need to do it.
Absolutely.
Same thing with in Minneapolis, and that I hope that doesn't be. I hope that's not taken wrong, because you know how I feel about Minneapolis. You know how I feel about social justice. I don't agree with any of what happened at the Capitol. I don't necessarily agree with violent protests at the Minneapolis, but I do think that there need to be protests. I think the protests were warranted. The
Mhm.
protest, right? And so, but I'm saying that as a white person. So going back, I don't want to get too far into that rabbit hole, but going back into what Summer was saying, I think it's important that we validate people first. Period. We validate people, and we
And
validate people.
realize the situations that everyone has been through, and that's why they are the way that they are. And instead of placing hatred and judgment onto people, we should almost like feel bad for them for being such a jerk or doing such a bad thing, and do what we can to help, instead of just saying I hate you because you're Republican, I hate you because you're Democrat, you're stupid because you wear a mask, you're a sheep, or you're a sheep because you do, or you know.
Right, and
That was Summer's tangent.
it's right. I mean, we've gotten on the, and this is where you go back to the two words of mental health. I think it's all of us. I don't think we can sit here and say that any of us are right in every single aspect. And I think that the conscious part of our human side is to learn, is to grow, is to find a way forward. And if wealth is that need for us to move forward, then we're probably looking more towards how do I accrue wealth. If our need to move forward is human relationship, we're probably looking towards human relationship. And so when we look at those things, and human relationship that's a whole broad spectrum, and wealth is a whole broad spectrum. They're not necessarily against each other. They can work together. But so when I look at this situation, I just love these conversations, because I know I don't have all the answers, but I love speaking what my mind's saying to hear what the answers might be back to it, right?
I
And
agree
I
with that,
that's the
definitely.
key to it. And so, like, teaching wise, I would never teach a class like this. Maybe I should, but I would never do it because it's too dangerous.
Hmm.
Right. But that's where podcasts free you up. And I love this. I love that you're doing this. I would love to be on again, but um I also would love to see how this all looks together. It's I mean, I just got done putting two girls to bed when I got on here, and it's 2.5 hours later, and I'm going, it's been like, I feel like it's been 15 minutes, to be honest
I
with you.
agree, and that's what's dangerous, honestly, with this free form, long running speech is when you get two people on like this or three people on like this together, you can just keep going, and you got to try
Yeah.
to wrangle it in at some point. But yeah, we can go again 100%. Anytime. I have one last question, and that is, why don't you run for public office?
Why haven't I?
Yeah.
Because what I've seen from people running for public office has been the attacks on their family and the attacks on what their family has done in the past, with the effect of what their family might do in the future. And I want to run for public office at some point. I do.
I would too. I would love it.
I'm interested in it. The thing is, it's not a decision I can make by myself. It's either
Absolutely.
me, it's my whole family, or it's just me. And if it's just me, I don't want to block my whole family from that public sphere, and that's not fair to them. I think my family would be fine with it. I'm not like, my family hasn't done anything that would be like, whoa, you're not going to get elected now. Like, that's not like what it is.
We're past that. We are way past that. I mean, you can do whatever you want, still get elected.
We are in the federal level, but not the state level. State level is still dirty on that sense.
Yeah.
But I don't want to put them through the pain of all that. I also want to make sure that I'm able to do the things that I do in my life that I enjoy to an extent that I enjoy to an extent that is going to be beneficial, right? So my belief in public office is that if I were to serve on, let's say, the State House of Representatives, I would come back home and still teach and coach. I'm not going to that's not my job. My job is to represent people in my district, and then to do my job for my students and my players, right? If I was looking at the House of Representatives of the United States or the Senate of the United States, right? If I'm looking at those two positions, now I'm looking at federal scrutiny over a district I represent that does not involve the rest of the country. Like, I'm a representative of one section of Minnesota, or all of Minnesota if it was the Senate, right? I think that's what we forget. Like, I fall trapped into this. I was actually proud of McConnell for standing up a week ago, but I hated him up to that point. Like, I couldn't stand what he was saying up to that point, because he was just blindly supporting. It looked like he was blindly supporting just the party lines, right? But then he stood up against it a week ago, and I have to give him credit for that.
I agree. Same standpoint as you.
Yeah. So but at the same time, that doesn't make me an anti-Republican. It just makes me anti anybody who's party lines. Like, you can't just be those party lines.
You just have to have some logic and step back and have some dignity. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but
I think
some
integrity is the word.
Integrity is a better word for that. Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So it's not out of the question for the future, 100%?
No, it's not. So right now I'm at the point where I actually am now old enough to run for Senate. I've been old enough to run for the House for 25 years. There are certain individuals that make me want to run for certain positions because I don't want them in those positions, but that's a personal opinion. I also have working through the legislative committee and things like that. That hasn't been long. It's only been this year that it started, but getting to meet representatives, one of the first things I did, I'm like if there's a totem pole, I'm like down here when it comes to that, because there's like administrators and there's, superintendents and other people on the committee, and then there's the representatives, and then there's like two teachers, right? But I made a point to call every representative and call them and thank them for serving in our office at the state level and for doing things that they don't want to do, and acknowledging it's going to be a long year. It's going to be a lot of debates on how finances should work and things like that. And I think that's where everything should start. Everything should start with an acknowledgement of where we all have a common ground of, like, we understand this.
Yep.
And once you get to that point, once you all understand that, then you can have an honest and real conversation, and you can disagree and you can get upset and you can yell. It doesn't matter, but you have an understanding that this will never be broken. This is the one place we agree on. And we have to find that line. And with the United States, it should be the Constitution, in my opinion. And with Minnesota State House and State Senate, it should be the people, period. With the House of Representative members, it should be the people they represent. Like, there's no reason for any House member to be talking about any other district in the entire country. They should never talk about anybody else. They should only talk about this is what my district wants, period, and be done with it. That's who they represent.
Yeah.
That's what I don't. That's the part that bothers me, and that's where I want to get into it. But if I run as an independent Republican Democrat, it doesn't matter for the first congressional district of Minnesota, right? If I did that, what would I be doing? I'd go to Washington. I'd have at least 70 people telling me what to do. And if I do that and make that move and say, this is what my people want, and I'm wrong about 40% of them, am I still protecting the rights of the minority in my district? And that's the question that we have to be okay with, is being able to do that. So like, I know that sounds contradictory, but that's the what's the right word for it? That's the that's the weird convulsion.
The realization, I don't know, I don't know.
That's the weird position that they're putting. Yeah, it's just that, because Jim Hagedorn can go with the best intentions and represent us with having a majority vote over a damn hand, right? Well, right now, I'm pretty sure his majority vote is no longer a majority vote. It's only been a month and a half.
Mm-hmm.
So how does he represent the people of his district versus his personal interest? And that's what's going to tell us who he truly is.
Well, we should wrap this up. We're like, what, 3 hours in, 2 hours in, something like that. Thank you for coming on. We will have you back for sure.
I'm a better talker than I am in class. Like in class, literally just, here's what you guys need to know. I'm going to sit back here, figure it out for yourselves. I have opinions that are different in some things.
All righty. Well, thank you for watching. Appreciate it. Tune in next time.